Hello everybody, welcome back to a set of Red Dead Redemption character analysis. We're back here. It hasn't been too long since the last episode, and this is the last of the Red Dead Redemption 1 characters. Now, I kind of went over everything. I went over all the characters in Red Dead Redemption 1, but they also made an appearance in Red Dead 2. But this is the last of the characters that I want to do for Red Dead 1. And then we'll be moving on to Red Dead 2 only characters, the ones you only see in the Red Dead 2, obviously, and it's kind of going to be wrapping up the Red Dead character analysis. I definitely don't want to do as much characters in Red Dead 2. Well, I actually do. I kind of phrased that wrong. There probably won't be as much um, in Red Dead 2 as there would be in Red Dead 1 that I want to do. Now, the reason that I kind of wanted to be thorough and do maybe a little bit of extra characters is because, for example, I was looking back on The Last of Us character analysis back when we were doing that, and I feel like I didn't do enough characters. I probably could have done more characters I wanted to do, and I just didn't necessarily get a chance to, or I didn't. And I kind of made a mistake in that regard. So, and with this character analysis and character analysis going forward, I kind of want to make sure that I want to make sure I do all the characters I want to do, particularly in certain games. But I wanted to make sure I kind of covered all the bases here on Red Dead 1 and also Red Dead 2. So I want to make sure I cover all two games in kind of the fashion that I want to do it. So hopefully that kind of all made sense, and just kind of getting that out of the way. But just kind of wanted to say that because it's just something I noticed. But yeah, in short, I just want to make sure I cover all the characters in the future. Anyway, so moving on, today we're going to be doing Edgar Ross, which he is pretty much, I wanted to do him because he features in Red Dead 2, but I don't even want to count that hardly. He just makes an appearance or two. But he's more prominent towards the end of Red Dead 1. Obviously, if you play, he'll appear more. And just because he's more or less an important character, because he is kind of the one that drives John to do what he does. Kind of like the leader of the Bureau in a way, which not really, but he kind of drives John more to do what he does in Red Dead 1, along with the rest of the government. But he is kind of the face of the Bureau in the game itself. So I figured he was an important enough character to make. Also, an important enough character to kind of wrap up Red Dead, for Red Dead 1 character analysis. But we're more going to be going over of what he does in Red Dead 1, which, even though we're probably going to see some of it in Red Dead 2, but like I said, he was more prominent in Red Dead 1. Anyway, so we're just going to dive right into it. Obviously, getting our info from the Red Dead Wiki. Great site, as always. Now, Edgar Ross is a recurring character in the Red Dead series, appearing as a central character and the main antagonist of Red Dead Redemption. It kind of explained it better than I did. And is a supporting character and a secondary antagonist in Red Dead Redemption 2. And with the addition of the Liars and Cheats DLC pack, Edgar Ross is also a multiplayer character model that can be selected in the Damnation section of the Outfitter, which is what you're seeing right now, the online play. And then we're going to go into some of the history. Now, born in 1861, Ross has a long-running career in law enforcement. He has many years of experience as a senior agent of the Pinkerton National Detective Agency under the mentorship of Andrew Milton, which he's also seen in Red Dead 2, more or less. Ross is praised as proficient and formidable in his work. And then the Horseshoe Overlook chapter, which is where you first see Edgar Ross and Agent Milton. Ross and his superior, Andrew Milton, approach Arthur Morgan while he is out fishing with Little Jack Marson by the Dakota River, just outside Horseshoe Overlook. Milton tries to make a deal with Arthur whereby if he hands over Dutch Vanderlyn to the Pinkertons, he will not be hanged for his crimes. Arthur angrily turns down the offer and the agents leave, with Ross mockingly telling Jack to enjoy his fishing while he still can. In the Clemens Point chapter, Ross and Milton approach Dutch and his gang at their camp in Clemens Point. Milton tries to convince the gang to turn on Dutch in exchange for being allowed to flee for a short time. This fails, however, and the agents leave empty-handed. It's more or less, Ross kind of shows up whenever Milton does. At least in Red Dead 2, you'll see he's kind of like his right-hand man. And in the Saint Denis chapter, during the bank robbery, of course, Ross is seen by Milton's side. Kind of like every cutscene when he captures and executes Jose Matthews outside the Lemoyne National Bank, ensuing a shootout. And in the Beaver Hollow chapter, this is after Milton is killed, I think. Edgar Ross is seen in Annesburg with his superior Agent Milton while leaving a business meeting with Leviticus Cornwall. After Cornwall berates them for their lack of progress, Milton tells Ross the pair have work to do. It's not after Milton dies. We'll get to that part, but that was just in Annesburg. You'll see one of the missions. Then following Milton's death, of course, now that we get into that part, Ross leads a large group of Pinkertons up the Beaver Hollow. While not physically seen, he could be heard yelling orders to his men and calling out to the gang to surrender. and in post 1899, and then at some point or after 1899, Ross left the Pinkerton Detective Agency. Later on, Ross joined the National Bureau of Criminal Identification, an association tasked with recording information of criminal activity and assisting law enforcement. And then, as Ross continued to excel in his duty, attaining further praise and respect, and in the Beecher's Hope chapter in 1907, Ross is appointed as the chief of the newly federal law enforcement body, the Bureau of Investigation, or the BOI. Ross and his new associate, Agent Archer Fordham, which is shown in this cutscene actually, if you see on the screen, find the corpse of Micah Bell in his hideout at Mount Hagen, and this puts them on a manhunt for the killer. The two agents are seen going to various towns and locations, interviewing a number of people after going through Valentine and Rhodes. The magic takes the culprit to John Marston at his ranch in Beecher's Hope, where they see him teaching Jack how to groom a horse. Just before the end credits roll, Ross and Fordham look on the ranch and leave, plotting their next move. And then in 1911, of course, the adventure of Red Dead Redemption. Prior to the events of Red Dead Redemption, Ross takes John Marston's family away from him in order to strong-arm him in the hunting down some of his former comrades from the Vanderlyn gang. Following the abduction of Abigail and Jack, Marston, Ross, and Fordham are seen escorting John Marston to the train station in Blackwater during the opening credits of Red Dead Redemption. And in Mexico, after John either apprehends or kills Javier Escuela, he meets with Ross and Fordham at Ramita de la Bahia Bridge, crossing between New Austin and Nuevo Paraiso, or Mexico. There, Fordham instructs John to further pursue Bill Williamson and return to Blackwater upon completion, mentioning Dutch Vanderlyn is believed to be at large in the area. Ross merely condescendingly adds that Abigail sends her regards before they take Javier away in an automobile, dead or alive. And then West Elizabeth, after John returns from Mexico, and then although Williamson and Escuela have been dealt with, Ross remains unsatisfied and reveals to John that he must next assist him and Fordham in tracking down Dutch Vanderlyn. After rescuing the informant Nastus from the wreck of the Serendipity and attempting to foil Dutch and his gang's robbery at the First National Bank of Blackwater, Ross decides to mount an assault on Vanderlyn's camp at Cochene with the assistance of the U.S. Army. During the assault, the armored car he, Fordham, and John are riding is rendered inoperable, so they are forced to continue on horseback alongside the accompanying U.S. cavalrymen, which is actually the gameplay you'll see right now, them, kind of running around in the armored car and everything, and that was before it crashed. Then once they arrive and below the gates open to Cochene, he, Fordham, and the soldiers assist Marston in dispatching the gang members until the American Army captain and Marston proceed further into the fortress. John eventually corners Dutch, who subsequently chooses to commit suicide by throwing himself off a cliff, declaring to Marston that their time is up and the Bureau will find another monster to justify their wages. Which is, of course, the iconic scene that you'll see towards the end of the game. Then, upon arriving at the site of Dutch's corpse, Ross is unimpressed with Marston's inability to have shot Dutch himself, taking Marston's pistol and shooting Dutch Vanderlyn's dead body, and Ross states that it looks better in the report that way. Then Ross and Fordham finally relinquish their custody of Abigail and Jack, telling Marston they could be found at his ranch at Beecher's Hope, before unceremoniously departing. Now, while John rebuilds his ranch and resumes living with his family for a time, Ross later violates the agreement, assaulting Beecher's Hope with a cognate, sorry, kind of misread that, of the U.S. Army and soldiers and the U.S. Marshals. Marston holds off waves of the attackers, fighting mercilessly to defend his family. Eventually, the Marston family retreats to the barn, and John sends his wife Abigail and his son Jack away from the ranch on a horse. And Ross and his agents, of course, surround the barn, fully armed with their weapons pointed at the door. That's kind of how the game ends. Deciding to sacrifice himself in order to secure his family's future, Marston exits the barn slowly and faces the attackers. Drawing his sidearm, Marston takes down as many of the attackers as he can, but is quickly gunned down by the firing squad. Ross victoriously lights a cigar as he watches a dying Marston fall to his knees. After Marston draws his last breath and collapses, Ross, the lawmen, and the soldiers then can leave the ranch, leaving John's corpse to be found by Jack and Abigail, which is a really sad scene. Obviously, you all know what happens towards the end of the game. It's really sad, and obviously everybody really hates Edgar Ross just for his character and kind of what he did. More or less the entire U.S. government for just betraying John and the promise that they said. But it's really kind of poetic in a way if you look at it. And in the epilogue in 1914, Ross had continued leading the Federal Bureau in Blackwater for 3 years until retiring in 1914 to a lake house at Lake Don Julio with his wife Emily. In spite of his retirement, however, the Bureau continues to contact him for consolation due to his experience and level of fame within their organization. In the same year, a 19-year-old Jack Marston seeks out Ross to avenge his father, After paying respect and mourning at the graves of John, Abigail, and Uncle, Jack visits the train station in Blackwater where he runs into Howard Sawicki. I think that's how you say his last name. A younger bureau agent, and inquires about Edgar Ross, and he learns that Ross has received a, quote, chest full of medals, which he says in the one mission. And then he, of course, retired to the small cabin on Lake Don Julio and Cholla Springs, New Austin. Jack Marston visits subsequently travel there, where he meets Edgar's wife, Emily Ross, with Jack assuming the guise of being tasked with to deliver a letter to Ross. She tells him that he is hunting with his brother Philip Ross on the south side of the San Luis River in Mexico, so it's just on the other side of Mexico. Jack then crosses into Mexico and finds his brother hunting along Rio del Toro. Philip tells Jack that Edgar is hunting ducks downstream. Proceeding west along the river, Jack discovers Edgar shooting at a flock of ducks and confronts him about the death of his father. Ross shows no more remorse for having betrayed and killed John, claiming that the one ultimately responsible is John himself and the life he lived. Ross declares that he would similarly have no hesitation to kill Jack. Then he tells him to leave before he does so. Jack refuses to leave, then resulting in a climactic duel. Ross is gunned down and falls dead to the riverside, thus Jack is successful in avenging John, which is such a great ending. That's technically the ending of the game because the credits kind of roll, but it's a very poetic ending, and that's kind of like, it's not technically required because it's a stranger mission. You don't have to do it, but it's kind of like an unofficial ending to the game. I always like to do it, of course. Then we're going to go over some extra stuff here in the Ross character analysis, which is just some extra stuff that the wiki has. Then throughout the events of Red Dead Redemption, Ross is portrayed to epitomize the unfair and detestable nature of the corruption in the federal government during its time. Kind of like I said, he kind of embodies the government, kind of through him. He's indifferent, snide, immoral, and disloyal, unscrupulous, and inequitable to a fault. This is demonstrated most when he abducted John Marston's family in order to strong-arm him into hunting the former members of the Vanderlyn gang, changing the terms of their agreement in order to suit his needs, and subsequently betraying Marston despite all he had done for Ross. In several instances throughout the game, Ross displays a rather dark, dry, morbid sense of humor. He joked that Abigail was killed in a prison riot last week, which is in the end of this mission, after Dutch gets killed. And then at one point he threatened John with execution by electric chair instead of allowing him to see his family if John did not cooperate with them. He may have also held some prejudicial views, like calling Nassus a savage after first encountering him, and assuming that he might not speak English after being told that Nassus was an informant. Ross was a purveyor of modernism and scientific progress, expressing his support for future and technology and new discoveries. Despite being older than Marston, Ross chooses to ride in automobiles and use modern weapons. And then Edgar Ross has a slightly buzzed, dark brown hair with thick mustache. Ross is always seen wearing his Pinkerton uniform, a crimson Parson vest, and a dark frock coat, and a bowler hat with silver trimmings accompanied by black pants and a matching tie. And just to go over his appearance here, that was his appearance in 1899. Then we're going to kind of go over his different appearances, just kind of like what he wears. In 1907, Ross's appearance has been altered somewhat. He has aged slightly with what appears to be small amounts of gray in his now middle-parted hair. He's not seen with a bowler hat and instead wears an ascot tie, a crimson opulent vest with a chain, black riding gloves, and an equally dark frock coat. And by 1911, when you see him in Red Dead, Ross has aged considerably. His hairline has receded, and his hair and mustache have completely grayed. He also appears to be shorter, and he wears a three-piece suit consisting of his beige dress jacket with a gray vest and a white shirt beneath, all white, sporting a red tie and a brown bowler hat. And in 1914, Ross's facial appearance is the same. However, his attire has changed since his retirement, consisting of an off-white shirt with beige suspenders, along with a red bandana and a white-brimmed hat. That's just some of the extra. I don't always go over that, depending on how long the character analysis is. But since it's not the longest of character analysis I've made, I figured I'd kind of like throw in some of the extra stuff that the wiki had to offer. And that's it for Edgar Ross. He's not probably not everybody's favorite character, just because of kind of what he did to John. But I feel like he was an important enough character because of what he did to John. Funnily enough, he was an important enough character to make a character analysis on, just because he kind of drives John to do what he did, and kind of is the one who ended up killing John Marston in the in the end there. So I think he was definitely not my favorite character, and like I said, probably not a lot of other people's favorite characters or fans of Red Dead. He was certainly an important enough character, and I kind of figured it was kind of good to kind of wrap it up with him. So that's pretty much it. We're going to move on to Red Dead 2 characters. Now, it's probably going to take me some time, probably another week or two until the next character analysis comes out, because I had to get some gameplay together for Red Dead 2 and stuff like that, and I got to figure out which characters I'm going to do first. Kind of like make a list. It's probably going to be another week or so before the next Red Dead character analysis. Then we're going to do Red Dead 2 only characters, and then we'll be moving on to the next character analysis. So stay tuned for that. And I'm really excited for Red Dead 2 because I feel like the character is a lot more interesting, and that I feel like I have a lot more to talk about in terms of kind of the Red Dead 2 characters on a personal level. But yeah, so stay tuned for all that. Leave a comment down below what you guys thought of all of the Red Dead 1 character analysis episodes so far as we're moving into Red Dead 2. Leave a comment down below what you thought of it. Leave feedback, whatever, on the video, whatever it is it may be. I would say I enjoy good or bad feedback just to get, just so I kind of know what to change or what not to change. Whatever it is it may be, leave a comment down below. Also leave a comment down below if you like Edgar Ross. The rare chance that anybody really does. Leave a comment down below what you think of him. All that good stuff. So leave comments down below. Comment section's open to discuss. And yeah, so with all that being said, make sure to subscribe for more content, like the video, all good stuff. Discord, Twitch, Instagram, links in the description as always. Now we'll see you guys in the next video.